Well, hello and thank you for joining me for another iTWire video with top Australian IT executives. I have with me today Dr. Glyn Brokensha. He is the Managing Director of Expr3ss, a new style of recruitment firm we're going to learn all about in a moment. And he is also has a co-founder who's here with us today but not in the interview, and her name is Caroline Burns and she's the Managing Director. So welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So Dr. Glyn, could you please tell us what is Expr3ss and how does it work?
Expr3ss is about getting the right people in the right places, getting square pegs in square holes, round pegs in round holes, oval pegs and triangular pegs in the right places. Something that traditional recruitment thinks it does quite well, but most often doesn't do very well.
Sure. Now I understand you have algorithms and the software smarts behind it. So what's the short story there of how? I mean, a lot of people have job boards, but you've got some special secret sauce behind it, the whole thing.
Have. And we're not a job board, although it's possible to jump onto our site customer by customer and see their jobs. We don't aggregate or bring together jobs or take payment for jobs. What we do is we're the final point of arrival of job applicants who might come from a job aggregator like Indeed.com, from a job board like seek.com.au. Any one of those places can forward applicants to our customer sites. Once they get there, we're interested in finding the can-do people, the people who will do, and the people who fit too. And most of the time in recruitment, it's not that the people who are appointed to a position can't do. We're quite good at assessing can-do skills. Most of the time it's when they struggle, it's because they're not the right person
in the
right place. They're not the right fit.
Yeah.
They haven't got the will-do attitudes or the fit to the role or the company culture.
So is it sort of a little bit like a blend between a Seek and an Indeed with eHarmony?
Well, that's an interesting idea. We did actually consider doing a product which is a little bit like eHarmony, but that's a little different. So what we do is we take ourselves into our customers' companies and we collect data from their existing employees, particularly the great ones. And then we look at the ones who are great and we say, how do we select people who are similar to that? Similar in the key characteristics and different in characteristics that don't matter. So there's some heterogeneity, some mixture, some variation in the mix.
So how do you do that?
We do that with a series of algorithms which are driven by surveys that I developed as a psychotherapist, as a doctor, in my psychotherapy practice over 20 years. And my co-founder, Caroline Burns, said one day when she had a very important set of recruitments to do for a company, an IT company actually, listing on the stock exchange in the dot-com boom, she said, what you do would actually work for recruitment. I said, no, it won't. She said, yeah, it's going to work for recruitment. Can you put it on the internet? And I said, well, it won't work, but I can put it on the internet because I've been programming computers since '69.
Sure, before I was born.
Well, not before I was born, sadly. So I've been programming computers since then, and so I found a simple way of putting the original survey on the internet. The geeks involved in this particular company happily jumped on and filled in the forms, and Carolyn was right. We were a very good predictor of success in role once we understood and measured what the role was. And so, different from eHarmony that basically says, hey, you might like her or you might like him, what we say is we know what we need to get. So all we need to do is make sure that in your applicant pool or your talent pool, you've got people like that, and we put them forward as characterologically suitable for the role.
Sure. Now we hear a lot about algorithms. They're like the secret software source for Google and Facebook, all sorts of people. How difficult was it to blend psychology with algorithms, and how would you best characterize or describe an algorithm for those who probably know, but maybe would love to hear how you would describe it?
An algorithm's a recipe. It's a recipe. Do this, put this in that, mix that, add a bit of that, do this for 20 minutes, put it here. And everyone knows that a recipe can be changed and altered and improved and made personal. So the algorithms that I created, came from 20 years observation in psychotherapy practice and longitudinal follow-up with some of my patients for many, many years, and their families too. So what I found was that if I started to look at this data, and then I started to create an algorithm that looked at the data in the way that I did, evaluated the graphs and the charts in the way that I thought about them, and mimicked how I would tease it apart, then gradually I developed something that actually worked. And I should have turned my mobile phone off.
That's
no
all right.
one ever rings me.
That's okay. Great. I love the ringtone. That's those classic ones from
classic ringtone,
the Star Trek.
yes.
Yeah, very, very appropriate for a software startup. So the algorithm is like a digital representation of you almost. It's like a digital clone.
It's a
That
digital
very
clone.
early version thereof.
Exactly.
Early
Well,
21st century
That's
version.
exactly what I did. And I first built it in Excel using Visual
Wow.
Basic.
Yep.
And so gradually I made it more and more complicated, added more layers, more decision trees, more evaluations. And in doing that, what I found was that it was gradually becoming more and more accurate, and I could condense the data down more and more to one or two single measures that said this person is a priority to interview, or this person is perhaps someone you might want to interview but you need to be careful about X or Y.
Sure. Makes me think of the detective Daniel Oliver from Isaac Asimov's books.
Oh, yes.
And so this is the very, very earliest bits of programming for a positronic brain.
You've got it exactly right, yes. Yeah. And,
I love all of Asimov's books.
Me too, and
Yeah.
there's a great deal of talk about robotics at the moment.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a shame that no one refers to his 3 laws.
Yeah, well, they do and they don't, because they say that the 3 laws are going to end up with, like that famous story with folded hands, where the
Yes.
robots are going to just tell us we can't do anything because they're there to protect us and they're there to protect humanity, and
Yes.
we have this this moral question. But I mean, thankfully, we're still decades, if not centuries, away potentially.
I'm not
Maybe
so sure.
decades.
We're not far away from what
well,
they
the
say will be
singularity.
the singularity.
That's it.
right.
45 years. Well, I
Exactly.
still think we're a while away, but I mean,
think you're
perhaps some of your algorithms will be part of the brain in the future.
I think there'll be new technologies, but we can talk about that later.
Another time, yes. So how long has Express been running, and what are some of your success stories?
Well, we've been using our methodology for more than 12 years now. Initially, my
I
brain
mean, you mentioned
was,
the dot-com boom at the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Initially, my brain was part of the algorithm,
Yeah.
and I was integrally involved in every single report. But gradually, we created the platform, which was created in 2006, and since then, we've been entirely web-based. So you also asked about success stories. I always think about one of our earlier customers, a commercial cleaning company in Adelaide where we started, and 12 months after they started using us, we got a call to say, do you know that we used to have a staff turnover of 42% per annum,
Yeah.
which is about average for the cleaning industry.
Yeah.
Entirely as a result of using Express, that's now 12% per annum.
Wow. What a
2
big
years
shift.
later, it was 5% per annum, and they're winning contracts because of the stability of their workforce. And they put us in their proposals as part of that.
Incredible. And these people, obviously, they cleaned up.
Exactly right. Yes.
Boom, boom.
Exactly.
So go on, please.
Most of our customers find that they get a whole host of benefits. First of all, reduction in direct advertising costs. So
Which will be huge.
huge. Radio Rentals dropped their advertising spend by 58%, Krispy
Wow.
Kreme by 62%. So we're saving them a lot of money in direct advertising.
And you're getting company cohesion because the staff have proper morale, everyone's working together, and
Exactly, yeah.
the benefits obviously flow.
The team works.
Yeah.
And so suddenly we've got a team that is more productive, people that are more engaged, people that stay longer,
People who want to work together.
people who want to work together and who work together successfully. And from an applicant's point of view, I mean, everyone wants to get the job that they apply for.
Sure.
There's no question about that. You apply for a job, you'd like to be offered it.
Absolutely.
However, you don't actually want to get a job that's not suitable to you because it will not be a success on your resume.
No, that's right. And you will come to resent it and want to leave and all that. Sort of stuff.
And everyone knows what that 6 to 18 months period is in a resume. It means it didn't work out. And so what we want to do is want to help our successful applicants be successful in jobs they'll stick in, be happy in, productive in, and successful in.
Sure. So what stops some of the other job boards from doing something similar, appropriating the idea of the algorithm? Probably they need the algorithm. And secondly, are there any other sites in Australia or worldwide that are doing anything similar, or is it still pretty unique?
I think we're still pretty unique. I'm not aware of anyone doing what we do. I'm certainly aware that some sites incorporate some degree of psychometrics or
Do
personality measurement.
Try to do some matching of some sort, because it's
Exactly.
common sense to kind of
It seems to
try
be that way.
Yeah.
I think one of our great strengths is the fact that we developed this instrument ourselves.
And
right
some
here.
time ago now, over many
some
years.
time ago.
Yeah, it's not some invention from the last 5
Correct.
minutes. Yeah.
It's proven in the field. It works. It's worked over hundreds of thousands of applicants and tens of thousands of job positions. And our customers typically get 3, 4 or 5 times return on investment. So it's a no-brainer to use Express.
You can clearly see that. And have you already gone global, or are you focusing on Australia at this stage? What's the sort of the plans
We're
there?
largely focused in Australia. We're certainly focused on English language, although we are represented throughout Asia. We do have a requirement really that people engaging with Express have good fluent English language skills. Now, most of the well-paid jobs throughout Southeast Asia require English language skills anyway, so that hasn't been an impediment to us, but of course we have global ambitions. We think that we can make a huge difference to companies that want to grow, who are being crucified by recruitment agency expenses, or we think we can make a big difference to companies that are growing, who are finding keeping up with the people factors and getting the right people is just too hard, too time consuming, and they just wind up getting worn down by the process. We've got, what do? We've got 3 people who are just not productive, but we went out 3 times and we still haven't got the right person. Is there any point in trying again? So they get worn down and blasé and about the whole process, when in fact if they were to use something like Express, their business would just take off.
Yeah. So you must have used this same algorithm to find employees for Express.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We're blessed. We've got some fantastic people working with us. They work well together, largely as predicted.
And must be low turnover as well. Because
absolutely. We started when, if we just look back maybe 3 years, we had 1 part-time employee who's still with us. We now have 13 full-time employees.
Wow.
And so we're very happy to keep and retain those people for their skills and to make use of the synergies that come when people work together and spark off each other.
You mentioned sort of how the concept of Express initially came to be. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that, but you must have had some pretty strong growth right from the very beginning, and it must be strongly growing still now.
We're growing extremely strongly, yes, and we're growing at least 30% per annum. And yeah, well, the beginning, I mean, when we moved from being a handcrafted service to being an internet delivered service completely,
which is more automated through the algorithms,
we actually dropped our prices by more than 90%,
which you can do when you automate.
Exactly. But of course we only had customers to support us at the level of paying 100%.
Right.
So we actually dropped down to 10% of that. And we very nearly went broke.
Well, you suddenly need a lot more customers.
Exactly. Well, fortunately, and we met just last night with one of our initial turnaround customers who's still with us, and they have been marvelous, as have many of those customers, and they joined, and from that moment onward we were in positive territory. We're debt-free, entirely self-funded, but if there are any investors out there who've got a few lazy million, I'd love to have a call.
Let us know, as you said. And any other specific stats or research to show how Express has helped your customers in their recruitment processes? I mean, you've already mentioned a few, but there might be some other things. I mean, I'm sure there's many things you can talk about.
There are. I'm thinking particularly of, say, Drake's Supermarkets. Now, Drake's Supermarkets is a large chain of IGA supermarkets with over 6,000 employees. And 12 months after they started with us, unbeknownst to us, they did a survey and they asked their managers to rate their employees, the new ones, vis-a-vis the ones that had come in with previous recruitment practices. And universally, the managers said that the new people were more engaged, they were more productive, and they were easier to work with, and they stayed longer.
Which is hitting all of the metrics,
all the pain points that businesses have. And so that came to us after 12 months. I've mentioned the reduction in direct advertising costs. A company in South Australia saved $150,000 in their first year of using Express, simply because their direct recruitment costs were so high. When customers experience, like Beaumont Tiles, in again a South Australian company, we started there, when they experience a reduction in staff turnover from over 20% down to nearly 2%, then that makes a huge difference to productivity, costs, and staff morale.
The numbers speak for themselves.
They do.
Yeah.
In fact, the original cleaning contractor that I mentioned at the beginning of the interview is on one of our interviews on our website saying, anyone who employs staff who is not using Express is mad.
Yeah. So when did you move to Sydney? Must have been a few years ago.
About 11 years ago,
Yep.
we moved to Sydney unfortunately, the Eastern Seaboard doesn't take South Australia terribly seriously at times.
Yeah.
We knew we needed to be here and on the ground.
Yeah.
And I like Sydney, so we're here in Sydney. Visiting Brisbane and Melbourne as required. We don't need offices in those places because we're an internet company.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
it's all online these days.
It's all online,
That's
and our staff support, teach, sell, and engage with people using phone, Skype, and every other modern convenience that comes with phones.
If teleportation was here, you'd use that too.
We would use it too, that's
Me
right.
too.
Yeah, don't buy shares in Qantas.
Well, not when teleportation happens.
Exactly, yes.
Unfortunately, it's still a while yet. Maybe when the singularity comes, he or she can figure it out for
Let's
us.
hope so, yes.
So, now, I think you mentioned at the beginning you don't take any commissions upon staff placements like
Correct.
a traditional recruitment firm.
Correct.
So, and I'm sure it's different for each company, but what's sort of the average cost, or what's the ballpark figure for people to use the Express service?
We have a really interesting way of approaching that, and that is that whenever one of our potential customers asks that question, the first thing we say is, what we'll do is we'll look at your business, and the cost of Express will depend on its complexity and also on its geographical dispersion. Having said that, we'll quote you, and we'll give you a quote at which you will certainly save 2, 3, or 4 times more than you spend. So it's actually not a question of how much you spend, it's how much you want to save.
Sure.
Having said that, smaller customers will pay less than $10,000 a year, and larger customers will pay 3, 4, or 5 times that much.
Sure.
But they'll all be saving 2, 3, or 4 times as much as they spend.
Well, from what you were saying before, it's going to be big savings for them and
Absolutely.
much nicer cohesion. So what other challenges has Express faced? What other challenges has it yet to face? And what other challenges does the recruitment industry have to face in the future?
If I take the last part first, I think the recruitment industry has to accept that the hundreds-year-old way of selecting staff by reading an advertisement about them that's called a resume,
Or a CV.
and going, oh, that's a better soap powder,
That
I'll
sounds
buy that
nice.
one.
Yeah.
And then conducting an interview. Now, if you think for a moment, we do a lot of interviews before we get married. And yet the divorce rate is about 19% in the first year.
It wasn't so successful, was it?
Exactly. So if interviewing worked, we'd all get married and stay married. It doesn't work because people are very poor at assessing other people in the context, particularly of a first or second interview, or even a 10th interview. And we have
because everyone's on their best behaviour still. There's been no engagement for real.
We call it the interview dating game.
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to be nice, you know. And so at the end of the day, interview and resume, well, Google showed it in a study of 10,000 hires, interview and resume contributed nothing to the accuracy of hiring. So I think we have to get over, as a recruitment industry, the idea that the human being is the best instrument for sitting down with someone and working out whether they're going to work in a particular role. We're not.
Yeah.
And just as everybody thinks they're an above average driver, everyone thinks that they are a perfect interviewer and they can do it, whereas others can't. But in fact, sorry guys, you can't.
Yeah, everyone else is crazy except me.
Except me.
It's everybody else.
So that's the challenges the recruitment industry faces. The challenge we face is to bring new technologies into play as they become available. And that's really part of my role in the company now, the R&D. There will be new technologies, new devices, new ways of assessing people that will be quicker, cheaper, more accurate, and we want to be at the forefront of that.
Last night on Late Line I was watching a gentleman, I forget his name now, Osterhout, I think. Anyway, he was talking about how the wearable the wearable augmented reality glasses are going to basically obliterate the need for tablets and smartphones, because you'll be completely hands-free. What you see in front of you will be translucent, so it won't interrupt. And you know, they're talking about how you'll see someone's face and it'll have recognition. You'll know their name even if you only saw them once. And that's surely coming. That'll be the decade of the 2020s where wearable technology will just take over.
Absolutely, and don't forget the importance of wet technology too, because the biotech industry is doing for biology what the tech industry did for tech 30 years ago. So we're going to see some remarkable stuff there. I mean, imagine a skin patch test that would tell you whether you were going to be a good receptionist or not.
Yeah.
It sounds like science fiction, but is it?
But so many things were science fiction, which are now science fact.
Exactly.
Yeah, incredible stuff. So how do you think the recruitment industry will look in 10 years' time?
I think that's an impossible question to answer, because first of all, there are going to be a whole swag of jobs that don't exist
Today,
now,
yeah.
that will be using technologies that haven't been invented yet to do things that we haven't even thought about yet.
Sure. Yeah.
So first of all, we don't know what the jobs are going to be. Secondly, we don't know what new technologies will come with the patch test on the skin to work out whether you'll be a great receptionist or
Yeah.
a hospitality worker or whatever it might be. And finally, whenever you predict the future, you're nearly always wrong. So I think it's pretty hard to say, but I do think that the struggle for accuracy in recruitment is going to be at the forefront of people's mind, because we cannot afford the waste of staff churn and staff turnover that is currently part of the employment marketplace.
I'm just thinking, this made me sort of think of the Sorting Hat in Harry Potter. And there's some of those dystopian sci-fi futures where you're told by the government you're going to be this kind of a person in this job.
Absolutely.
I know that this is not what Express is about.
Not at
it's
all.
about helping companies to find the right thing. But it just made me think that you know, there's still going to also be a place for not everyone's going to be an employee. There still have to be people like yourself, entrepreneurs.
Yes.
And I mean, if you can get some sort of an idea of what you'd be good at through some sort of a test, that might help, that might guide you. But that's still not going to stop the human spirit from being able to do whatever it wants. And I guess what you're doing is trying to get the best of all those things together.
Yes.
And
there will always be the exceptions who prove us wrong. That's in the nature of any testing.
well, that's
Yeah.
human beings.
Exactly. What we're trying to do is tip the scale radically towards getting it right more often.
Yeah.
And
And
that's
most people
good
are
for
going to be
everybody.
workers of some sort for some company, because that's just the way it is on the planet Earth.
I think so, regardless of robotics. I mean,
Yeah.
every time there's been a new piece of technology, people have said, oh, that's it,
yeah.
that's the end of work.
Yeah.
The spinning jenny is going to put everybody out
Yeah.
of work.
Hasn't happened. We're still using paper, we're still
Yes.
using vinyl records, we're still using
Exactly.
cassettes, still using CDs and DVDs.
And you think about
Books
it,
aren't dead.
The vacuum cleaner
Yeah.
was designed to reduce housework.
Yeah.
What happened
Increased
was
it.
we raised the quality of the expectation of housework.
Yeah.
The word processor was supposed to reduce typing loads and make typing easier. It's actually increased the number and range and quality of document production.
Yeah.
So it's actually created document production specialists.
Yeah,
So
incredible.
new technologies create new jobs.
Absolutely, which is exciting. So look, towards the end of the interview, I always like to change gears briefly
Yeah.
and just ask if you could please share the best piece of advice that you've ever received to help you get where you are today.
Sleep more, worry less.
I think that's very good advice. Very good
All
advice.
entrepreneurs, people starting businesses, even people in work, very often don't sleep enough,
Yeah.
and they worry more than they need to.
And they're probably on their deathbed, they go, well, I wish I'd slept more and I wish I'd worried less. And it's
Exactly.
too late by then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sleep more, worry less is the best advice I ever had.
Sure. No, that's really good. So do you have any final messages for iTWire viewers and readers and for your current and future customers?
To people who are employing other people or responsible for choosing other people, remember that human beings are inherently flawed at making the judgments that you're making, and find a technology, preferably ours, but find a technology that supports you in that decision making. Because we know that if you're a pilot flying an aircraft at night, then you can't tell whether you're upside down or falling towards the ground or rising up into the sky. You need your instruments to tell you that. And you need your instruments to tell you what's going on with the person in front of you at a job interview. Because if you can target that interview using those instruments, then you can actually make your interview work. And by making your interview work, you make that a more successful outcome, both for yourself, your company, and for the employee you're just about to bring on.
Well, I wish you the best of luck, and you know, here's hoping that we don't see the singularity anytime soon, so your algorithms have as much chance as possible of helping humans and businesses succeed.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.